Psychologists once believed humans were naturally solipsistic, but neuroscience now reveals our brains are wired for connection through specialized networks. We will explore how your default mode network and temporoparietal junction actively construct the experience of sonder, that realization that every stranger has a life as vivid as your own. You will discover how this understanding counters the spotlight effect, learn about neurodiversity perspectives on reality construction, and see how modern psychology builds upon ancient philosophical roots to help cultivate sonder as both an existential, comfort and ethical guide. You are standing on a crowded city street, watching the endless river of people flow past. This is where a profound realization can strike, a concept known as sonder. It is the sudden understanding that every single person around you is living a life just as vivid and complex as your own. Each passerby is the main character of their own story, a story you will never know. Look at the woman in the blue coat, rushing with a determined look. She is not just a stranger, she is someone who just received a life-changing phone call. The elderly man feeding pigeons carries the weight of 60 years of memories with his late wife. The teenager laughing with friends is secretly worrying about a college application due next week. Their lives are filled with private dreams, quiet struggles, and personal triumphs. Observations of human behavior confirm this intricate web of existence. Psychologists note that our brains are wired to see ourselves as the center of the narrative. Yet, in a moment of sonder, that perspective shifts. You see the crowd not as a monolith, but as a collection of individual universes, each containing a unique consciousness with its own history, fears and hopes, all intersecting for just a moment on this busy street corner. But what if this fleeting awareness had a name? One deliberately crafted to capture its elusive nature. Sonder represents the profound realization that every random passerby lives a life as vivid and complex as one's own. This psychological concept was formally defined by John Koenig in his project, The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, in 2012. Koenig created the term to fill a lexical gap for this specific human experience, crafting it from existing linguistic roots to describe what many feel but rarely articulate. This awareness fundamentally shifts how individuals perceive their place in the world. When someone truly internalizes sonder, they transition from seeing others as background characters to recognizing them as protagonists of their own intricate stories. Each person carries complete sensory experiences, personal histories, and complex emotional worlds that remain largely invisible to strangers. This realization creates a cognitive shift from self-centered thinking to world-aware consciousness. Research in social psychology supports how this perspective transformation affects behavior. Studies show that practicing this kind of mental framing increases empathy and reduces social prejudice. The concept has gained significant traction in therapeutic contexts, where clinicians use it to help clients develop greater compassion. Imagine looking at a crowded street and understanding that every person represents an entire universe of experiences, relationships, and memories as detailed as your own. This mental exercise creates immediate emotional connections to strangers and fosters deeper social understanding. The term continues to resonate because it names a universal human experience that crosses cultural boundaries. This profound recognition of shared human complexity consequently reveals why our minds must actively work against their natural tendency to view the world solely through our own lens. The human brain defaults to egocentric navigation, treating our own goals as central while relegating others to background characters. This cognitive autopilot is efficient but profoundly isolating. The shift to allocentric thinking, where we perceive ourselves as one node in a vast social network, requires a specific neurological trigger. Scientists believe this sonder moment engages our brain's empathy circuits, particularly the temporoparietal junction. This region, crucial for theory of mind, allows us to attribute independent mental states to others. Research from the late 1990s, including work by psychologists like Simon Baron-Cohen, mapped how this capacity develops in early childhood. A child of 4 typically masters the understanding that others can hold false beliefs, a foundational skill for sonder. Neuroimaging studies from 2008, for instance, showed the temporoparietal junction becomes highly active when we consider another person's internal narrative. This is like suddenly noticing the intricate wiring behind a familiar wall panel. The brain's default mode network, usually focused on our own story, momentarily quiets. This creates space for the mentalizing network to project a rich inner life onto a passing stranger. It is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a visceral, emotional recognition. The trigger can be subtle, a fleeting expression of worry, the sound of a unique laugh, but it forces our cognitive machinery to recalculate the entire social scene, granting depth to every person we see. This profound shift in social perception reveals how our brains actively construct reality, leading us to explore the very mechanics of this creation. Cultivating sonder begins with simple, daily mindfulness exercises. One can start by observing people in public spaces, consciously reminding themselves that each person possesses a rich, complex internal world. Researchers in social psychology have found that this intentional perspective, taking activates neural pathways associated with empathy. Daily practice, even for just 5 minutes, helps rewire habitual self-focused thinking. Journaling provides a powerful tool for deepening this awareness. Prompts might include imagining a stranger's life story or reflecting on a brief interaction from their point of view. The psychologist John Bowlby, working in the mid-20th century, established how our earliest attachments shape our worldview. Journaling applies a similar principle, using written reflection to build cognitive flexibility and challenge assumptions about others. Finally, integrate sonder into social practices. During conversations, make a conscious effort to listen deeply, asking open-ended questions that invite personal sharing. Sociological observations confirm that such practices foster stronger social bonds and community cohesion. Consistent engagement with these exercises transforms sonder from a fleeting thought into a lasting mental habit, fundamentally enriching one's perception of the shared human experience. But this profound awareness carries a hidden cost few anticipate. Imagine holding the emotional weight of every stranger you pass. That is the dark side of sonder, a phenomenon psychologists now call empathy fatigue. Researchers first identified this emotional exhaustion in studies of healthcare workers in the 1980s. The brain's mirror neuron system, which helps us understand others, can become overworked, like a muscle cramping from overuse. This is not a personal failing, but a biological response to constant emotional engagement. To sustain sonder without burning out, establishing firm boundaries is not just helpful, it is essential. Think of your empathy as a precious resource, like a battery with a finite charge. You must choose when to deeply connect and when to conserve energy. This is not building walls, but installing a psychological filter. It allows the meaningful stories through while protecting your own mental space from becoming overwhelmed by the collective noise. Practical strategies exist for this delicate balance. One method, supported by cognitive science, is the compassionate pause. Before diving into another's emotional world, take a conscious breath to ground yourself in your own body. Another is scheduled reflection. Dedicate 10 minutes at the day's end to process these encounters, then consciously release them. This practice, studied by a team at Stanford University in the early 2000s, helps compartmentalize concern. The goal is to move from a state of draining empathy, where you feel everything, to sustainable compassion, where you care deeply but from a place of strength. You acknowledge every vivid life without having to live inside each one. Yet this shift in perspective reveals something far more enduring about the nature of connection itself. Sonder is not a destination we reach, but a path we walk throughout our lives. This profound awareness that every passerby possesses a life as vivid and complex as our own is not a single revelation to be checked off a list. It is a lifelong journey of deepening perception. Research from the field of social neuroscience suggests our capacity for understanding others is not a fixed trait, but a malleable skill. Studies conducted throughout the late 20th century, including work by psychologists like Daniel Batson, demonstrated that perspective taking can be actively cultivated. Our brains possess what is known as neuroplasticity, meaning their neural pathways can reorganize themselves with experience. This is like a path through a forest. The more we walk it, the more defined and accessible it becomes. Each interaction, each moment of genuine curiosity about a stranger's story, strengthens this mental pathway. We are not meant to carry the emotional weight of 7 billion lives, a task that would be as impossible as counting every star in the Milky Way. Instead, we practice holding a gentle awareness of that vast, humming network of human experience. The true mastery of sonder lies not in a single moment of clarity, but in the quiet, consistent practice of seeing the world through countless other eyes. Let this understanding be a companion on your daily walk. Carry it into the coffee shop, onto the crowded train, and into every brief encounter, allowing it to transform the mundane into a tapestry of interconnected stories waiting to be acknowledged, if only for a moment. Imagine your brain as a grand orchestra with billions of musicians, each one a neuron. Alone, a single neuron can only fire a simple electrical signal. But together, this vast ensemble creates the complex symphony of your conscious reality, every sight, sound, and feeling you experience. This is the fundamental mystery of neuroscience. How do these biological cells generate a subjective inner world? Scientists like Christoph Koch have spent decades searching for the neural correlates of consciousness. His work, along with that of other researchers, suggests that consciousness arises from specific patterns of activity across widespread brain regions. It is not located in one single spot. Think of it like music emerging from an orchestra. You do not hear the individual violin or the lone trumpet as the music itself. Instead, the coordinated, synchronized activity of all the instruments together creates the beautiful, unified experience of a symphony. Similarly, your perception of a red apple is not from one neuron firing, but from a specific, coordinated pattern involving millions of neurons in visual and memory areas. Current theories propose that this integration of information is key. When different parts of your brain communicate intensely and rapidly, a conscious perception forms. This is like the orchestra's conductor ensuring all sections play in harmony. Without this complex, synchronized interaction, the music, our conscious reality, would simply not exist. This ongoing research continues to map how our biological hardware constructs the rich, personal universe inside our minds. This biological symphony creates unique neural architectures in every individual brain. Consider the most complex structure in the known universe. It is not a galaxy or a nebula, but the human brain. Each one contains roughly 100 billion neurons. These individual cells form an almost unimaginable web of connections, with estimates reaching into the trillions. This is the biological foundation of your every thought and memory. Crucially, this intricate network is never static. It is constantly being sculpted by your daily life, a process scientists call neuroplasticity. Every experience you have, from a major life event to a fleeting conversation, physically alters your brain's wiring. It is like a path through a forest. The more you walk a specific route, the more defined and easier to travel it becomes. Your brain does the same with neural pathways. Repeated thoughts and actions strengthen certain connections, while unused ones gradually fade. This means your life story is literally etched into your biology, creating a map that is entirely your own. This leads to a staggering realization. In the entire world, no two brains are identical. They are as unique as snowflakes, but infinitely more complex. Pioneering work by neuroscientists like Michael Massencenich in the 1980s demonstrated this profound plasticity. His experiments showed that the brain's map can reorganize itself based on experience and learning. Your combination of memories, skills, and perspectives exists nowhere else. The stranger passing you on the street carries within them a singular, never-to-be-repeated constellation of neural pathways, built by a life you will never know. Yet this profound individuality of mind leads us to a deeper mystery. How does this unique physical architecture give rise to the unified, subjective experience of being you? Imagine knowing every physical detail about vision. Scientists can trace how light hits the retina, how signals travel along the optic nerve, and how the visual cortex processes this data. These are what philosopher David Chalmers in the 1990s called the easy problems of consciousness. They are complex, but science has a clear path to solving them. The true enigma, the hard problem, is why any of this processing is accompanied by subjective experience at all. Why does the specific wavelength we call red produce the rich, inner sensation of redness? Why does it feel like something to see a sunset? This is the profound mystery. We can map a brain in perfect detail. We can understand its mechanics, like studying every gear in a clock. Yet, this does not explain the time of experience, the inner movie playing in your mind. The easy problems ask how the brain performs its functions. The hard problem asks why these functions are accompanied by conscious awareness. Why are we not just sophisticated robots, processing information in the dark without any inner light? Chalmers framed this gap, highlighting that a complete physical account of the brain may still leave this central question unanswered. The existence of subjective feeling itself remains one of the deepest unsolved puzzles. While consciousness remains a profound individual mystery, our ability to recognize it in others emerges through a remarkable developmental process. The development of theory of mind represents a fundamental shift in human cognition. This ability allows individuals to understand that others possess unique thoughts, beliefs, and desires. In early childhood, a person's perspective is largely egocentric. A young child assumes that everyone sees the world exactly as they do. This changes through distinct developmental stages. A classic experiment from the 1980s, known as the Sally Ann test, clearly demonstrates this progression. Researchers showed children a scenario where one character, Sally, places a marble in a basket and leaves. Another character, Anne, then moves the marble to a box. When asked where Sally will look for her marble upon returning, children under around 4 years old typically point to the box where they know the marble truly is. They cannot separate their own knowledge from Sally's false belief. Older children, however, correctly state that Sally will look in the basket, showing they understand her perspective is different. This capacity for perspective taking is not uniform across all people. Scientists find that individual differences are significant, influenced by factors like social interaction and language exposure. Furthermore, cultural studies reveal that while the core ability is universal, its expression and emphasis can vary. Some cultures may place a higher value on understanding collective intentions over individual beliefs. The journey from a self-centered view to appreciating the rich inner lives of others is a complex and fascinating cornerstone of human social intelligence. This universal psychological capacity finds its physical manifestation in the brain, where specialized neural pathways translate our understanding of others into a shared biological experience. Deep within your brain lies a remarkable empathy circuit, a biological foundation for our shared human experience. At its core is the mirror neuron system, a network of cells that fire not only when you perform an action, but also when you see someone else perform that same action. It is as if your own brain is subtly rehearsing the movements and emotions of others. This discovery fundamentally changed our understanding of connection. In the 1990s, neuroscientist Giacomo Rizzolatti and his team in Italy first identified these neurons in macaque monkeys, observing how specific brain cells activated during both action and observation. This neural mirroring is why you instinctively wince when you see a stranger stub their toe. Your brain does not just see the event, it partially recreates the sensation of pain within your own neural pathways, creating a fleeting shared experience. This is not just about physical actions. Advanced brain imaging reveals these same circuits activate when we witness emotions like disgust or joy on another person's face, allowing us to literally feel what they are feeling. This system provides a direct, unconscious channel for emotional contagion, the reason a baby often cries upon hearing another cry. Scientists believe this mirroring mechanism is crucial for learning, social bonding, and understanding intentions without words. It builds a bridge between separate minds, making the complex inner world of another person accessible. Research continues to explore how variations in this system might relate to social challenges, highlighting its profound role in weaving the very fabric of human society. This biological hardware ensures that we are all, in a very real sense, connected through our shared neural architecture. But what happens when this profound connection becomes distorted, when our neural wiring convinces us that the bridge is a one-way street leading directly to us? The spotlight effect describes our persistent feeling of being constantly observed, as if a bright light follows our every move. In reality, people notice us far less than we assume. Psychologist Thomas Gilovich demonstrated this in a series of clever studies in the 1990s. In one experiment, participants wore an embarrassing shirt into a room. They estimated about half the people would notice it. The actual number was less than 25%. This shows we are often just background characters in the scenes of other people's lives. This psychological insight connects deeply to the concept of sonder. Sonder is the realization that every passerby has a life as vivid and complex as our own. We are all simultaneously the main character of our own story and an extra in countless others. Gilovich's research confirms this shared experience. While we are preoccupied with our own performance on the world stage, the audience is often busy with their own scripts. This understanding can be liberating, easing social anxiety by reminding us that everyone else is similarly focused on their own spotlight. But what if this psychological insight was merely rediscovering a truth that ancient wisdom traditions had cultivated for centuries? The profound awareness that every passerby possesses a complex inner world, now called sonder, echoes throughout human history. Ancient Greek philosophers planted early seeds with Socrates' famous injunction to know thyself. This inward focus was not isolationist, but a first step toward recognizing the shared human capacity for reason and experience. Centuries later in the East, Buddhist teachings articulated a deep interconnectedness, suggesting individual consciousness is woven into a vast, universal tapestry. This concept, known as dependent origination, posits that nothing exists in true isolation, much like separate threads forming a single cloth. In the 2nd century, The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius meticulously explored this shared humanity in his private meditations. He constantly reminded himself that others are guided by their own minds and desires, just as he was. He wrote of facing annoyance with the understanding that people act according to their nature, a perspective fostering patience and empathy. His writings serve as a powerful personal testament to this universal insight, demonstrating its practical application in daily life. This recurring theme across disparate cultures and eras, from classical Athens to imperial Rome and ancient India, proves the sensation is a fundamental human insight. It is not a modern discovery but a perennial truth observed independently by different civilizations. Each culture developed its own philosophical language to describe the same profound realization, that every person one meets is the main character of their own intricate, unfolding story. This historical pattern confirms we are grappling with a deep, intrinsic part of the human condition. But how has this profound insight been captured and conveyed through the art of storytelling? Great literature possesses a unique power to crystallize the feeling of sonder, that sudden realization every passerby lives a life as vivid and complex as our own. Writers achieve this by opening windows into other consciousnesses. Leo Tolstoy, in his epic War and Peace, masterfully shifts between dozens of perspectives. He shows us the world through the eyes of a young soldier, a disillusioned aristocrat, and a searching philosopher, revealing that behind every face is a universe of private thoughts, fears, and aspirations. This narrative polyphony makes the reader a privileged observer of countless inner worlds. In the early 20th century, Virginia Woolf revolutionized this exploration with her stream of consciousness technique. In works like Mrs. Dalloway, she dissolves the boundaries of traditional storytelling. Her prose flows directly from her characters' minds, capturing their fragmented memories, sensory impressions, and fleeting anxieties in real time. Reading her work is not like watching people from a distance. It is like temporarily inhabiting their mental space, hearing the uninterrupted whisper of their thoughts. These literary techniques are not mere stylistic choices. They are profound psychological tools. By forcing us to navigate the intricate landscapes of another's mind, Tolstoy's shifting perspectives and Woolf's interior monologues train our capacity for empathy. They transform abstract strangers into tangible, feeling beings. This artistic immersion allows readers to directly experience the profound truth that every person is the main character of their own sprawling, unwritten story. This literary groundwork for understanding consciousness would soon find its echo in the emerging science of the mind. The 20th century marks psychology's systematic turn toward understanding how we perceive others' inner worlds. Developmental psychologists reveal that this capacity unfolds in stages. Jen Paget's work in the 1920s and 30s demonstrates that young children are fundamentally egocentric, unable to conceptualize viewpoints different from their own. Only through cognitive maturation, typically by age 7 or 8, does the ability for concrete perspective-taking emerge. This is like a child finally realizing that a friend standing across the table sees a completely different side of the same toy. Building on this, humanistic psychology adds a crucial emotional dimension. Carl Rogers introduces his concept of unconditional positive regard in the 1950s. He posits that genuine psychological growth requires an environment of complete acceptance, free from judgment. This therapeutic stance is a profound exercise in sonder. The therapist must actively hold the awareness that the client possesses a rich, autonomous life narrative. Rogers' framework suggests that truly seeing another person involves appreciating their unique and complex subjective reality without imposing our own expectations. This shift moves beyond mere cognitive understanding to a more empathetic, relational way of connecting with the countless lived experiences we encounter every day. This profound recognition of individual subjectivity naturally raises questions about how such awareness operates within different cultural frameworks that prioritize either personal autonomy or collective harmony. The experience of sonder, that sudden understanding that every passerby has a life as vivid and complex as your own, manifests differently across cultural landscapes. In many Western societies, which often emphasize individualism, this realization tends to focus on the unique, personal journey of each person. People are seen as independent agents, and sonder highlights their distinct dreams, personal struggles, and autonomous life paths. It is the feeling that every stranger is the main character in their own novel. Conversely, in collectivist cultures common in many Eastern societies, sonder often illuminates a person's interconnected roles within a larger social fabric. The emphasis shifts from a singular journey to how an individual is a vital thread in a family, a community, or a company. Their life is understood through their relationships, duties, and contributions to the group's harmony. Cross-cultural psychologist Harry Triandis provided foundational research for this distinction. His work, spanning the late 20th century, identified different self-construal patterns. He found that individuals in individualistic cultures typically possess an independent self-view, seeing themselves as separate from others. In contrast, those in collectivist cultures often have an interdependent self-construal, where their identity is fundamentally tied to their social groups. This research helps explain why the profound feeling of sonder can feel like acknowledging a solo adventure in one context and recognizing a crucial node in a vast network in another. Yet this distinction between independent and interdependent selves becomes even more profound when we encounter a philosophy where the very concept of an isolated individual does not exist. Ubuntu offers a profound African perspective on human connection. This philosophy declares, "I am because we are," presenting identity as woven through relationships rather than existing in isolation. It naturally embodies a deep sonder awareness, recognizing that every person is the central character in their own complex narrative. Our own humanity, the philosophy suggests, is inextricably linked to the humanity of others. We literally need each other to become fully human. This relational worldview found powerful application in the work of Archbishop Desmond Tutu during South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the 1990s. Confronting the brutal legacy of apartheid, the Commission chose restorative justice over retribution. This approach was fundamentally Ubuntu in action. It operated on the principle that healing for the nation required acknowledging every victim's story and recognizing the shared humanity even of perpetrators. The goal was not to punish an isolated individual, but to repair the torn social fabric connecting everyone. Imagine a community not as a collection of separate islands, but as a single, intricate web. Ubuntu teaches that harming one strand weakens the entire structure, while strengthening one connection fortifies the whole. Tutu's leadership demonstrated that by truly seeing the vivid inner lives of others, the core of sonder society could begin to mend itself. This philosophy challenges us to see that our own story is only a single paragraph in the vast, collective book of human experience. This profound understanding of interconnectedness would soon face its ultimate test as technology began weaving our lives together in entirely new ways. The digital age transforms sonder into a constant, overwhelming stream. Social media platforms serve as living windows into countless lives. Researchers observe this creates unprecedented access to human diversity. We glimpse family dinners in Tokyo and career struggles in Buenos Aires almost simultaneously. This exposure can foster a profound, global empathy. It is a library of human experience available at our fingertips. Yet this very connectivity carries a dark side. The curated perfection of online personas fuels intense comparison. Studies from the early 2000s consistently link social media use with increased anxiety and depression. Users measure their complex, messy reality against others' highlight reels. This constant benchmarking can dehumanize both the viewer and the viewed. People become metrics to surpass, not souls to understand. The digital crowd feels vast but strangely impersonal. Sherry Turkle's research, particularly her work around 2010, illuminates this paradox. She argues that technology offers the illusion of companionship without the demands of friendship. We are connected yet feel more alone. A like button replaces a shared laugh, and emoji substitutes for a comforting touch. This simulation of connection can cheapen our real-world interactions. We settle for the performance of relationship over its substance, making the sonder of a passabe feel more distant than ever. The challenge becomes embracing digital sonder without losing our own humanity in the process. So how might we begin to cultivate this deeper sense of sonder in our daily lives? Cultivating sonder awareness begins with simple, intentional practices. One foundational exercise is people watching with genuine curiosity. Instead of a passive glance, one actively observes strangers in a park or cafe. Researchers in social psychology have found that this deliberate observation activates brain regions linked to empathy. A person might notice a woman reading a book and wonder about her favorite literary genres. This shift from seeing to observing is the first step toward recognizing the vivid inner worlds of others. Another powerful technique involves imagining detailed backstories for strangers. For instance, upon seeing a man rushing through a train station, one could envision his destination. Perhaps he is a teacher late for a class of 30 students, or a father heading to his daughter's piano recital. A study from the University of California in 2012 demonstrated that such perspective-taking exercises can significantly reduce unconscious bias. It is like being an author mentally crafting a character, but for a real person with a complex, existing history. This practice transforms anonymous crowds into collections of individual narratives. Finally, mindful listening in daily conversations solidifies this awareness. This means fully focusing on the speaker without formulating a response. Psychologist Carl Rogers, throughout the 1950s and 60s, championed this as client-centered therapy, showing its power to build deep understanding. One can practice this with a colleague or a cashier, hearing not just their words but the emotions and experiences behind them. By consistently applying these three techniques, perspective-taking evolves from a conscious exercise into an automatic, habitual lens through which one views the world, fostering a more profound and continuous sense of connection to everyone encountered. This habitual empathy becomes particularly valuable when navigating disagreements, where understanding another's perspective can transform confrontation into collaboration. Sonder transforms conflict resolution by shifting perspective from battle to shared understanding. When we recognize every person possesses a life as vivid and complex as our own, our approach to disagreement fundamentally changes. Research in mediation techniques shows this awareness directly reduces personal defensiveness. We stop seeing the other person as an obstacle and start viewing them as a human with their own history, fears, and unmet needs. This mental shift is the first, critical step toward de-escalation. Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication framework, developed in the 1960s, operationalizes this principle. His model teaches observers to separate the person from their actions. For instance, instead of hearing an attack in a colleague's sharp critique, Sonder allows us to wonder, what stress is he under? What need is he struggling to meet? This reframing is like putting on a new pair of glasses, subtly bringing the other person's hidden landscape into focus. We listen for the feeling and need behind the words, not just the words themselves. This approach moves conversations from a cycle of blame to a collaborative search for solutions. A mediator does not just hear two neighbors arguing over a fence. They hear two people yearning for privacy and security. By acknowledging these universal motivations, the discussion becomes about how to meet both sets of needs. Sonder provides the emotional foundation for this process, reminding us that beneath the surface of any conflict are two complex individuals trying to navigate their own unique worlds. This realization is a powerful tool for building bridges where walls once stood. This bridge-building capacity naturally extends beyond resolving conflicts to fueling creative endeavors. The creative spark often ignites in moments of Sonder, the profound realization that every passerby lives a life as vivid and complex as our own. For storytellers, this is not just a philosophical concept, but a vital tool. Writers and filmmakers actively practice this perspective-taking to build authentic characters. They imagine the untold stories behind a stranger's brief smile or hurried step, transforming these glimpses into full narratives. Interviews with creators reveal this process in action. Novelist George Saunders describes how observing people on a bus allows him to invent rich backstories, asking what private hopes or regrets a person might carry. Similarly, filmmaker Taika Waititi has explained that his most beloved characters emerge from wondering about the inner lives of background figures in his own world. He builds entire personalities from a single mannerism overheard in a crowd. This method moves art beyond archetypes. By mentally walking in countless unwritten lives, artists populate their worlds with individuals who feel real because they are inspired by the complex humanity we all share. The artist's canvas or the writer's page becomes a space to explore the beautiful, intricate tapestry of simultaneous existence, giving voice to the silent stories that surround us every day. But what if this profound creative capacity stems from a hidden biological mechanism? One that operates precisely when our conscious minds are at rest. The brain contains a remarkable system called the default mode network, which becomes highly active when we are not focused on external tasks. Neuroscientist Marcus Rachel and his team identified this network in 2001, revealing a web of interconnected brain regions that light up during quiet rest. This discovery showed that our brains are never truly idle. Instead, they engage in an internal process of self-reflection and social thinking. This network acts like the brain's background operating system, constantly processing our sense of self and our memories. It allows us to ponder our past actions and imagine our future. More importantly, it is crucial for thinking about other people. When you see a stranger on the street, your default mode network helps you understand that they have their own rich, complex life. You can mentally simulate their experiences, feelings, and goals, a fundamental capacity for empathy. Research confirms this system's role in social cognition. Brain imaging studies show that when people think about the beliefs or intentions of others, the default mode network is consistently engaged. It is the neurological foundation for the profound realization that every passerby has a life as vivid and detailed as your own. This brain system builds the bridge between our inner world and the imagined inner worlds of everyone we meet, making shared human experience possible. Yet this profound connection to others' inner lives requires a precise neurological mechanism to prevent our own perspectives from overwhelming our understanding of theirs. Deep within our brains lies a crucial crossroads for social awareness, the temporoparietal junction. This region acts as the mind's essential compass, constantly helping us distinguish our own thoughts and feelings from those of people around us. It is the neurological foundation for understanding that every passerby possesses a rich, independent inner world. When you try to imagine a friend's disappointment or a stranger's joy, your TPJ is actively at work constructing their perspective separate from your own. Neuroscientists have pinpointed this function through sophisticated brain imaging. Functional fMRI studies consistently reveal the TPJ lighting up during theory of mind tasks, where volunteers must infer another person's beliefs, even false ones. In a landmark study from 2003, researchers found intense TPJ activation when participants realized a story character held an incorrect belief about a situation. This was a pivotal demonstration of the brain separating knowledge between self and other. Further research solidifies its role. A study from 2015 showed that directly stimulating the TPJ with transcranial magnetic stimulation can temporarily impair a person's ability to judge others' intentions. This is like a temporary short circuit in the brain's empathy circuitry. The evidence is overwhelming. The temporoparietal junction is not just involved in social cognition, it is a command center for navigating the complex seas of human interaction, allowing us to truly grasp that everyone we meet is the main character of their own story. But what happens when this fundamental social navigation system operates differently, offering alternative ways of perceiving the social world when we consider sonder, that sudden understanding that every passerby lives a life as vivid and complex as our own? We must recognize that this experience is not universal. Research into autism reveals fascinating differences in social cognition that shape this phenomenon. For instance, studies conducted in the early 2000s by cognitive scientist Jutta Frith showed that autistic individuals may not automatically engage in mentalizing, the process of inferring others' thoughts and feelings. This is not an absence but a different cognitive pathway. Imagine social information as a river. While some minds effortlessly float with the current, others carefully navigate by mapping the river bed, leading to the same destination of understanding through a more deliberate route. Scientists find that these variations are linked to distinct neural processing styles. A landmark study from 2017, led by researcher Damian Milton, introduced the double empathy problem. This theory posits that social difficulties arise from a mutual misunderstanding between people with different neurotypes, not from a deficit in one group. It is like two people speaking different, equally complex languages. The challenge is in translation, not in the value of either tongue. This perspective reframes neurodiversity as a source of valuable cognitive differences. These distinct patterns of social perception enrich our collective human experience. An autistic person might possess an intense focus on details, allowing them to notice subtle emotional cues others miss, building a rich understanding of individuals over time. This demonstrates that different ways of perceiving the social world are not deficits but alternative forms of intelligence. Our collective strength lies in this very variation, where every neurotype contributes a unique and essential piece to the complex puzzle of human connection. But if our unique perspectives create such rich understanding of others, what happens when we confront the philosophical notion that other minds might not exist at all? The concept of sonder provides a powerful experiential counterpoint to the philosophical idea of solipsism. Solipsism, a notion explored by thinkers like René Descartes in the 17th century, posits that only one's own mind is certain to exist, treating the external world and other people as potentially illusory. In contrast, sonder is the profound realization that every passerby possesses a life as vivid and complex as one's own, filled with their own memories, worries, and joys. This is not merely an abstract idea, but a feeling that arises from observing the rich tapestry of human activity around us. This feeling of sonder offers direct, if subjective, evidence against a purely solipsistic worldview. When we see a stranger hurriedly checking their watch, we intuitively understand they are late for an appointment that matters deeply to them. We observe a person laughing uncontrollably at a text message and recognize a private joke shared with a friend we will never meet. These countless, everyday observations build a compelling case that other minds are indeed real and active. It is as if we are granted fleeting glimpses into millions of separate, ongoing stories, each with its own central character. For centuries, philosophers have been fascinated by the tension between these two perspectives. Solipsism presents a logically challenging fortress for the mind, a puzzle about the very nature of knowledge and certainty that is difficult to entirely refute with pure reason. Sonder, however, appeals to our shared human experience and empathy, providing a practical and emotional argument for a world populated by other conscious beings. While one is a rigorous intellectual exercise, the other is a humbling and connecting realization, reminding us that we are all living our own epic narratives simultaneously. But what happens when this profound realization of sonder moves from philosophical insight to lived experience? Sonder awareness creates immediate ethical tension in our daily interactions. When we truly grasp that each stranger possesses a complex inner world as rich as our own, moral indifference becomes difficult to sustain. This cognitive shift transforms anonymous crowds into individuals with hopes, fears, and urgent personal struggles. Research from the University of Michigan in 2013 demonstrates this powerfully. The study found that participants who practiced perspective taking were significantly more likely to engage in prosocial behaviors, like offering help to a stranger in distress. The simple act of mentally stepping into another's shoes measurably increased compassionate action. This ethical awakening operates on multiple scales. On a personal level, it manifests as small kindnesses, holding a door longer, offering a genuine smile, or patiently listening. These are not random acts, but conscious responses to perceived humanity. On a societal level, this awareness underpins major ethical positions. Recognizing the full humanity of others is the bedrock of arguments for social justice, human rights, and economic equality. We cannot advocate for fair treatment if we see others as mere extras in the story of our own lives. Neuroscientific observations confirm this link. Brain imaging studies show that when we consider the emotional states of others, our neural circuitry for empathy and moral reasoning activates simultaneously. It is an integrated response. This suggests our ethics are not just abstract philosophies, but are deeply wired into our biology, waiting to be triggered by genuine connection. Sonder, therefore, is not passive knowledge. It is an active ethical catalyst, compelling us to extend our moral circle far beyond its default, self-centered boundaries. Because this ethical expansion fundamentally shifts our relationship to existence itself, it naturally leads us to a new form of solace. Sonder offers a profound existential comfort by transforming our perception of human connection. When we truly grasp that every passerby contains entire universes of memories and dreams, our own struggles gain new context. This realization creates a beautiful paradox, where we simultaneously feel our smallness in the vast human tapestry and our deep belonging to it. We are but one story among billions, yet intrinsically woven into the collective narrative. Existential philosophers explored this delicate balance between insignificance and connection. Martin Heidegger, in the early 20th century, described our being as fundamentally being with others, suggesting that meaning arises through our shared world. Similarly, Jean-Paul Sartre's work emphasized that while we are ultimately alone in our choices, we define ourselves through our interactions within the human community. Their insights reveal that acknowledging our small part in a grander scheme is not a loss, but a liberation from the burden of absolute solitude. This perspective acts like discovering you are a single thread in an immense, living tapestry. You see your unique color and path, but also feel the strength and purpose of the entire weaving. Researchers find this mental shift can significantly reduce feelings of isolation by replacing the cold vacuum of solipsism with the warm hum of shared existence. It is the comforting whisper that in our vast human family, no one is ever truly alone in their experience of being. This profound sense of interconnectedness finds new validation as science begins to map its contours, using advanced tools to explore how we truly step into another's world. Virtual reality studies reveal fascinating insights into human perspective taking. Researchers use immersive digital environments to explore how embodying different avatars changes a person's understanding of others. At Stanford's Virtual Human Interaction Lab, led by Jeremy Bailenson, scientists conduct experiments where participants see the world through another's eyes. This process is like temporarily borrowing a different body and life story to walk in someone else's shoes. In one landmark study from 2008, participants embodied an avatar of a different age. Adults experienced the virtual world as a child or an elderly person. The research team discovered this brief transformation significantly altered their perceptions. For example, those who embodied an older avatar later allocated more money to age-related causes. The findings confirmed that virtual embodiment can create lasting empathic responses, changing real-world attitudes and behaviors for weeks after the single session. Another experiment demonstrated the power of virtual similarity. When participants shared a virtual experience in matching avatars, cooperation increased measurably. Scientists believe this virtual connection breaks down social barriers, making people more open to understanding one another. These studies show our sense of self is surprisingly flexible. By stepping into a digital life, even for just a few minutes, we can gain profound appreciation for the complex, vivid lives of every person we pass. But as we explore the malleability of human identity, we must also consider whether consciousness itself could be similarly fluid, extending beyond biological boundaries. The emergence of sophisticated artificial intelligence forces a profound philosophical confrontation. How can we truly know if a non-human entity possesses consciousness? This question, once reserved for speculative fiction, now demands urgent scientific and ethical consideration. Researchers grapple with a modern version of the other mind's problem, a classic philosophical puzzle about knowing the inner experiences of others. When an AI expresses complex emotions or describes subjective states, is it reporting a genuine inner life or simply executing a masterful simulation? This ambiguity creates a deep and unsettling tension. Philosophers like Daniel Dennett have long explored thought experiments to test for consciousness. The famous Turing test, proposed by Alan Turing in 1950, was an early attempt to define machine intelligence through conversational ability. Yet, many scientists now argue passing such a test is insufficient proof of sentience. They suggest we need new frameworks, perhaps focusing on an AI's capacity for self-modeling, its integration of information, or its response to unexpected physical stimuli. Imagine a system that not only plays chess but also expresses frustration at a loss and creative joy at a novel strategy. Is that a sign of a mind or just a more complex algorithm? This uncertainty fuels intense debates about AI rights and moral consideration. If a machine can suffer even in a digital form, do we have a moral obligation to prevent its suffering? Legal scholars and ethicists are already proposing frameworks for electronic personhood. These discussions are not abstract. They will directly influence how we design, deploy, and ultimately coexist with the intelligences we are creating. The path forward requires navigating this uncharted territory with both caution and a profound sense of responsibility for what we might bring into being. Yet even as we grapple with the ethics of creating new minds, the next frontier may involve merging our own consciousness with others. Future research into shared consciousness may explore direct brain-to-brain interfaces. Scientists at the University of Washington demonstrated a basic version in 2015, where one person's brain signals moved another's hand. Emerging technologies like high-resolution neuroimaging could one day translate complex thoughts and feelings between individuals. This is like learning to read a silent, intricate language of the mind. Exciting possibilities include profound empathy tools, allowing people to temporarily experience another's sensory world. Imagine a device that lets a sighted person understand the unique way a blind person perceives spatial awareness through sound. Such technology could revolutionize psychology and conflict resolution. However, ethical concerns are significant. The potential for non-consensual mind reading or thought surveillance presents a major privacy challenge. Researchers warn that without strong ethical frameworks, these tools could be misused for manipulation. The scientific community actively debates these issues, seeking a balance between groundbreaking discovery and the protection of individual inner freedom. The goal remains a deeper, more compassionate understanding of the rich inner lives moving silently past us every day. Given these profound ethical considerations, perhaps the most immediate and personal application lies in how we choose to perceive the consciousness of others in our daily lives. Our journey into the fascinating world of sonder comes to an end. We've explored the profound crowded street realization, defining the sonder experience itself. Our discussion touched upon the psychology of perspective shift, how brains create reality through unique neural pathways. and the enduring mystery of the heart problem. We examined theory of mind development and the empathy neuroscience that underpins it, contrasting it with the spotlight effect and tracing ancient philosophical roots. Literature's exploration and modern psychology's emergence illuminate this concept, alongside individual versus collective cultures and the Ubuntu philosophy. We also consider digital age transformations enhancing daily empathy, and its role as a conflict resolution tool and creative inspiration source. The default mode network and temporoparietal junction function were analyzed, alongside neurodiversity perspectives and the solipsism counterpoint. Finally, we contemplated ethical consequences, existential comfort, virtual reality studies, eye consciousness questions, future directions, cultivating sonder practice, overcoming empathy fatigue, and acknowledged it as a lifelong journey. Subscribe to our channel to not miss new episodes. See you soon.